I've been on quite the adventure, little brother.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
Last of Us Part 1 is a recreation of the cult PlayStation 3 title by Naughty Dog that utilizes a number of graphic and accessibility enhancements that are exclusive to the PlayStation 5. However, even on lesser settings, things may occasionally become rather tense. Consequently, whether you're a die-hard fan reliving a favorite on Sony's newest hardware or playing this post-apocalyptic adventure for the first time, here are some tips to get you started. Starting with tip number 9, explore freely. The Last of Us post-apocalyptic setting necessitates gathering resources wherever you may find them. How much you've gathered will determine how successful you are in combat, whether it is supplies for healing kits, ammunition for your weapons, or even stuff to occupy the attention of your adversaries. As a result, you'll want to spend as much time as you can exploring every place you come across to make sure you found all that can be found there that is valuable. You often only get one chance to acquire something because you don't frequently return to any spots, so make the most of it. Moving on to tip number 8, craft regularly. You may access your crafting menu after you have enough supplies to put together a useful item, such as a healing kit or Molotov cocktail. You can only carry so many resources, thus it's a good general rule to always have those sorts of stuff maxed up when feasible. Use up what you have in your inventory to create everything you don't have maxed out in order to ensure that you can pick up the new things if you come across surplus resources like alcohol or rags. In other words, never purposefully leave anything behind. Moving on to tip number 7, use supplements carefully. The post-apocalyptic landscape is likely littered with supplements in the form of plants and tablets that may be used to improve a number of Joel's skills, including listening mode range, weapon sway, healing speed, and others. Make sure you don't spend your supplements on things that won't actually change much because you won't discover enough supplements in a single game to enhance every ability. The majority of gamers will probably gain the most from adding their supplements to maximum health and weapon sway. If you have enough supplements to continue upgrading abilities later in the game when the difficulty grows, consider putting a point or two into healing speed to ensure you can get away and top off your health faster. Moving on to tip number 6, prioritize holsters upgrade. The Last of Us has a huge amount of tools and components that may be utilized at workbenches for enhancements as you go through the game. You should immediately improve both of your holsters, one for pistols and one for long guns, since doing so will enable you to quickly swap between up to 4 firearms. Set up your preferred weapons in those locations, and be sure to always reload them before battles. If one of your guns runs out of ammunition, you can still go into your bag, find that pistol, and switch it out for another, but having 4 holsters means you won't have to do this nearly as frequently when under attack. Moving on to tip number 5, engage less. You'll find it challenging to approach the majority of combat in The Last of Us unless you're playing it on the simplest difficulty setting. A careful combination of stealth, melee, and sparing use of firearms is necessary for the bulk of confrontations in the game. Make careful to conduct some scouting before confronting enemies to make sure you don't have to rely too much on that weaponry or become unexpectedly cornered. Use Joel's hearing skill as much as you can to gain a sense of the layout of a room before charging in to engage in combat, since it can provide you with useful information about where opponents are situated and what sort of baddie it is. However, you'll discover that the odds aren't usually in your favor, so before going all out, set up some traps and silently eliminate less dangerous foes with stealth strikes. Moving on to tip number 4, always have an escape plan. As you won't have the advantage in the majority of conflicts, and no amount of planning can take into account every conceivable circumstance. Enemies, both human and infected, are a serious threat since they can constantly track you and pursue you after they've spotted you. As a result, you should constantly look for places in each location where you can put some space between yourself and any abominations if things don't work out. Thoughts like jumping through windows to the other side of a wall will frequently provide you the fleeting opportunity required to heal or make an item before the infected enemy finds you. You don't want to get backed into a corner, so do this instead. Moving on to tip number 3, use shivs more often. In The Last of Us, shivs are one of your most valuable items. A shiv serves as a defensive equipment that may be utilized to immediately kill an attacker and save you from an otherwise certain death if you find yourself surrounded by attackers and being held by the fearsome clicker. Shivs may also be utilized to unlock a number of closed doors that are in the way of rooms filled with beneficial supplies. It's often worth using a shiv to enter the area, since you could even discover the supplies needed to make more of them there. Having said that, don't waste your time upgrading melee weapons, because making additional shivs will almost always be more advantageous. Moving on to tip number 2, pick up fired arrows. One of Joel's most lethal and effective tools is the bow, which can be acquired quite early in the game. In large-scale battles, its capacity to kill opponents with a single arrow at a distance while keeping you safe in stealth is quite important. With minor improvements to its draw speed, it may even be a potent weapon during furious shootouts. The best part is that each arrow has a chance to remain intact after striking a foe, giving you the chance to sometimes collect them from dead bodies. Keep a lookout for sparkling arrows sticking out of your defeated adversaries' corpses, and make sure you don't leave any behind. Moving on to final and most important tip, save more. As a result of The Last of Us' generous autosave option, you usually won't have to worry about having to replay significant amounts of the game after dying. It's important to remember that manual saves are another option if you want to make sure you can undo some of your choices. You could be disappointed at how much resources were required to succeed if you just almost escaped a brutal fight. While there is nothing wrong with moving on after that long and difficult victory, there is also nothing shameful about going back to a save just before the battle. Choose your own path in order to try again in the hopes of coming out in better shape, particularly on higher difficulties where every bullet and piece of equipment is valuable. Well, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it so far. If so, then subscribe to the channel and like the video in order to see more gaming content like this in future. Comment down below what are some of the tips you will use and what video do you need next. I'll see you all in the next video. Till then, bye bye.